Hi everyone. Let's wait to see if we get a few more people on. Gem's your co-host. Gems, where are you? Hi everybody. Just waiting for Gem to unmute so we can get going. Okay, well she's not unmuting yet, so I'll start. I'm Molls. We're going to talk a little bit about anxiety. This mental health project called OneMinding has been sponsored by Cope. Gem is saying she's frozen for some reason. Leave and come back again, Gem, and then I'll add you as a co-host if you can hear me. Can everyone else hear me? Can you just give me maybe click an emoji just to let me know that you can hear me okay? Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Oh, loads of you. Wow. Hi, everyone. So basically, Gem's the co-host. She usually kind of does this bit, so I will try my best to do this bit. So we've been sponsored by Cope, and the Twitter for that is Unlimited Cope. I am a mental health coach. Gem is a good friend of mine and someone that I've helped and has a lovely understanding of what I teach. And I think she's there. So what we're trying to do is put together a mental health project, mainly for crypto, but if anyone outside of crypto wants to be a part of it, that's absolutely fine. We have a Telegram chat. That chat room is 24 hours, so one of us should be around to answer any questions or if anybody needs us. And we're just basically going to do what we can to raise awareness of mental health and help people as much as we can. Gem's back. Sorry, guys, let me just work out how to do the co-host thing again. Invite co-host, Gem. Send. Okay. So if you would like to speak, just... I think there's a function on here where you can raise your hand. Sorry, I'm used to Zoom. It's a bit different on here. But there is something you can do, I think, to let me know that you want to be a speaker. And we can do that. And then, we'll go from there. So I think someone requested, Gem, can you speak? No. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties.
Hello.
Yay!
I'm so sorry. God. No anxiety though. It didn't make me nervous. I'm fine. Beautiful. Oh, I heard the beginning bit. I couldn't log out, but I think, welcome everybody, and really, really happy to have you all here. I think, Molls, you've already explained that we're sponsored by Cope, which this is the third episode of OneMinding, which is going to be surrounding anxiety. I've done some work with Molls over the last 4 years, and it's completely changed my life in every single way. So we've thought, it's a great way to spread knowledge and help people in the community. We've already got a couple of requests, but Molls, do you want to just sort of start and really break down what is anxiety and why is it so rife now?
Yeah, thank you, James. Thank you, John. You're such a great co-host. I was actually a little bit lost without you, so I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So, anxiety is rife. I used to suffer from it. I know you've suffered from it. I know most people I know at some point have had some form of anxiety, and how it can grip us. Anxiety has such a physicality to it. We can all the way up to panic attacks. The tightness in the chest, we can get tight in the jaw. We can have sensations throughout our body. For me, it's probably one of the most physical mental disorders that we can have. So when we get it, it's incredibly powerful. And what we do is we try to do everything we can to avoid it. And the fact is the avoidance can actually make it worse. So this is what I want to speak to tonight, is like, so what do we do about anxiety? What is it? Because, I could speak to 100 people and I'll go, what do you think your anxiety is about? What is your anxiety? And they will say it's because of something that happened in my past. It's because of my childhood. It's because of my relationship. It's because of my work. Everybody will have a reason. They will always find a reason for the anxiety. And it'll look like they won't be okay unless that reason is resolved. And often the reason can't be resolved, especially if they're attaching it to a past event. So what I say is, attaching anything to it is actually incredibly unhelpful. If we can detach the world from our anxiety, we can start to get a truer meaning of what it actually is. Because anxiety is an overload of thought. It's not actually about what you're thinking. It's about the fact that you have too much thought. So if I catch myself, so the fact that I understand it doesn't mean to say I don't ever have anxiety. I rarely get it now, I have to say. But if I do, I don't go into my mind and scan the world and find the reason for it and try and bring it back to that and try and work out what I need to do about it. My deep understanding of anxiety, and let me tell you, it was very, very bad for me at one point. So this isn't me just telling you and without having experienced it. My anxiety was hideous, to the point of anxiety attacks at one point in my life. But what I saw was that actually anxiety is coming from thought in the moment. There is only ever one truth. There is only ever one truth. There's only ever one thing creating our feelings in the moment, and that is our thinking in the moment. And I know we've talked about this on the other calls, but it's really important. Thought, feeling are two sides of a coin. What you are thinking in your head is what you are feeling. Okay, that's it in that moment. Now, what the brilliance of the mind does, it takes that thought and makes it look like something other. It makes it look like the past. It makes it look like something in the future. It makes it look like absolutely anything, but it will try and attach it to something. So it can look like here we're saying, well, if I've got nothing to fix, how does it go? Am I doomed to live the rest of my life with anxiety if my thinking is creating it? What I'll say here is actually no. There's something in understanding what it is that actually makes it much, much easier to deal with. It actually starts to dissolve it, because when it's not the whole world, when it's not your past, when it's not a future that you're creating, when it's actually just a passing thought, it starts to calm it down. It starts to bring it back to what it really is, rather than projecting it out. See, what the mind always wants to do with any mental illness, with any mental disorder, is project it out into the world. It wants to attach cause. And when it does attach cause, it can compound it. So a lot of what we do to try and get rid of a feeling actually makes the feeling worse. Because if you think about the fact that if what I'm saying is true, and I want you to see this for yourself, I know it's true. I've taught it as true, but it's all about your own experience. But if what I'm saying is true, then clearly when we feel something we don't want to feel and we try and fix it, we're adding more thought. Yeah. So again, it's the dissolving of thought. It's the subtraction of thought that is the key here to really helping us understand. It's we've got so caught up in additive, in exercises and all the things that we have to do to try and feel better, but all they're doing is adding more and more to the mind. And again, so what I teach is something called, another name for it is subtractive psychology, because we're taking away. We're like, is it really true that what you think is causing your anxiety is causing it? And what does it mean if it isn't true? What if it is thought in the moment that is creating your feeling? And what really needs to happen is for thought to change and you will feel better. And how does thought change? Well, it changes on its own. So it sounds so counterintuitive, what I'm saying, because I'm saying leave it alone. Stop giving it a movie. Stop giving it a story. Stop giving it a reason. See it as a feeling in your body coming from thought in the moment, and do nothing. And that's like, to us, we're like, wow, no, I'm not sure. The mind doesn't like that. The mind's a doing. So the mind gets really caught up with that. So it's really interesting to see that thought is never going to cure thought. You're just adding more thought. And actually, your anxiety is telling you that you're overthinking, and to slow down, stop thinking so much, stop attaching so much to it. So we've got all this system is in place that we don't understand until we see it, which is obviously why I'm trying to help you guys, and why I help people with it is because I saw it for myself around 8 years ago, and it completely changed me. And I know for Gem, it changed her. CJ's on here, and she's happily, she's spoken about this online. So how much it's helped her. So we have this truth that you will not find peace of mind in your mind. It's in the observation. It's in the seeing through it. It's in starting to understand that the mind is always going to come up with a never-ending stream of bullshit of why you feel like you feel, or why your life looks how it looks, and it will have a lot of matching feeling to that. But the truth is that feeling is transient. That reason isn't true. It's like the freshness of the moment is the fact that you're free in it. But the mind is so tricky, it will always create the contraction that will make you believe that you're not. So anxiety is, again, it's so potent because we feel it, and we feel it so much in the body, and we're in a constant state. See, what happens when we get it is because it's so uncomfortable in our body, we do everything to avoid it. So the avoidance then becomes so, it did for me, and I know it does for a lot of my clients when they come to me. They talk about how the avoidance of the anxiety leads them to shrink their world. Okay? So if you think your anxiety is caused by the world, you will start scanning the world and seeing what you need to change or what you can do less. Where can you kind of shut something out that's going to make you feel safer and not have this feeling? And I did that myself. My world became very small because I felt the anxiety was coming from outside of me. So I just shrunk my world to feel safe. And the shrinking of the world is not where the safety is. Again, it's so interesting how deceitful our minds are that can really look true. But all we're doing is limiting ourselves, and it doesn't come from the outside world anyway. So that limitation is of no value to the anxiety. In fact, again, the avoidance tends to make it worse. You don't hear anybody saying that, well, I get really bad anxiety, so I shut myself in my room for a year and then I felt better. That tends to just get worse and worse and worse until they hear something that changes it. And I'm hoping that what me and Gem are going to teach you is that is what you're going to hear that's going to change it for you or for somebody around you that starts to understand this. Now, we are in an epidemic of mental illness, so I believe this is really valuable and really helpful right now. And we have to say that, not that I'm against anything else that tries to help anybody, but if all the therapies that are out there now that talk about the content of the mind being the problem and going into the mind, then we wouldn't be in the state that we're in. So in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, and anybody is welcome to challenge me, the old model of therapy, where we use the mind and the content of it and the stories it creates to get better, actually isn't that helpful, because what we're doing is we're giving the personal mind more power. We're allowing the mind to be more in control. And it's really interesting because what I teach is it takes away that control. we start to dissolve our inherent belief that what our minds are saying is true, or saying something that's real. And we start to see that the mind is just creating noise constantly. So there's like, I think Stanford University said we have 100,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thinking. Now, we know that so much of that is nonsense. You know, you get thinking throughout the day. We go, oh, that was a weird one. But there's some thoughts that really, really look true to us. And to be fair, not even those aren't true. There isn't any truth in our own thinking. You know, that's a hard one, because we can really become compelled and enamored with our thinking sometimes. You know, we have an ego. It wants our thinking to be right. But what we come back to with this understanding is the fact that we're much happier when we're not believing our own thinking. We're much more present and much more content when we see beyond it, when we get to observe it, when we see that actually the thing that is the clouds that come in the way of the sunshine of our happiness is thought. And it's like, so what do you believe that really is unhelpful, that if you could see it as untrue would make you more free? You know what?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, sorry. No, carry on, darling.
I don't want to cut you off, but I was just, that was the most profound, amazing thing that you've taught me, is that everything I ever thought about myself was complete bollocks. Mm-hmm. And I think the first time we properly started working together, I'd basically gone from working all over the country, writing £1 million contracts, doing presentations in front of hundreds of people, and all of a sudden a life event happened. I now know it was nothing to do with the life event. It was just my perception of it and how I thought I could or couldn't deal with it. I ended up basically not being able to leave the house for a while. I was scared of everything. And it wasn't until I worked with Molly, because I've had sort of traditional therapy before, when I was a teenager, with parents splitting up and foster care and things like that. But it was all very, you know, every week I went, I'd feel awful when I left, because I was talking about things that obviously were upsetting me, but they became bigger and larger, and I had exercises to do. And well, if you think like that, that won't work. And it was all so complicated, and it was all too much. So sometimes I would drop out of the therapy and just sort of go along as I am. And I was in and out for years and years. And as I sort of turned into a sort of like 22, 23, everything was great. And then I had this life event sort of 4 years ago, and I started working with Molls, and she just basically, to know that it was nothing, not that it's not your fault. And also that it was all the thinking that made me feel like that, you know, scared to answer the door, or to answer the phone, or to even go outside at some points. But I was still the same person. It was just my thinking that was making me do that. And I remember I cried and cried a lot. The first time it properly made sense, because I thought, wow, what a bastard I've been to myself. And then I started laughing, and Molls, we just laughed. But I always remember you saying, when the penny drops, people either they laugh, they cry, or they tell me to fuck off. And I can just totally imagine that, because it's such a shift in your thinking. It's like, fuck it, nothing matters now. And obviously still things happen, and I get lost a bit, but it's so brilliant to be able to just go back and remember none of it matters, and it's all just in my head, and it always was, and it always will be. And it's easy to say that, but to believe it and to know it is probably the most important thing I've ever learned in my life. So I just wanted to add that on, Molls. Thank you.
Oh, I know, that's beautiful. Thank you for talking, and thank you for being open enough to listen when I taught you, and hearing what you've heard. Because, you know, again, I had a very similar experience. Mine was 8 years ago, and I was really lost and really caught in my head, and had been for a number of years. And I'd been in the therapy world before that, and I was like, how does this happen to me? And then I found this understanding, and it profoundly changed me. And for me, there was just this moment, this insight into thought that was like, oh my God, this really was all me. Like, it's really, my whole experience is coming from thought. And it was incredibly powerful. And it can seem like, really, like, yeah, I get it. But it's when you really get it. And we don't ever know when that's going to be. But if you stay in the conversation, we've got a Telegram chat, and on there's an article, and that's got some book links to it. So we'll share this on Twitter afterwards. But it's that willingness to challenge the mind. Now, the mind's not going to like it, and it will give you reasons why not to do it, because that's the nature of the mind. But the fact, I think, anybody that finds their way to this understanding and this teaching means to me they're usually ready to hear it. And if you're just open, at some point the penny will drop. Because at first it makes logical sense. You're like, oh yeah, I can see that could be thought, or oh, I don't know how it's going to help me though, but yeah, okay, I'll stick around. But there really is a moment of insight, which is like night and day. And that's when you'll know. And I know that Jem's had it, and I know CJ's had it. That there's this moment where it just all makes sense. It all turns on its head. It goes from, oh, it wasn't the world, it was me. But it isn't me in a way of feeling guilty or stupid, or it was me and it's such a profound seeing. It's so enlightening in a way that you just suddenly the world looks different, and that world is just becomes more playful. And again, it's like you don't get stressed or think you have to see it or you have to see it quickly. It's a moment. It's just a moment, and when it's your right moment, that is when you'll see it. But I think even to just be in the conversation is knowing that you're in the right direction. Because, we're all most of us probably are into crypto, and we're like, oh, it's a new paradigm in money or in finance, or in whatever way you want to look at crypto. It's like there's this new way of doing things that's different from how it's always been done. We look at Bitcoin and we can see that's a really that's a new paradigm in economics. So we see that what I teach, these principles, this subtractive psychology, is the same thing but for the mind. We're seeing something very, very different. We're getting to understand something very, very different, and that can sometimes be a little bit challenging. But going back to the anxiety and the physicality of it, it's so easy to understand how we get so caught in it, because that physicality makes us scared of being scared. So we're adding, again, much more thought to the mix. So that fear becomes compounded by being scared of the fear. And we can see how, when we know physically that makes us lock down. We have fight, flight, and freeze. So we're going to go into one of those states. And when we do, we just get so caught, so lost. It just seems like it can really look like everyone else is okay and we're not. We really can do that. And then we beat ourselves up even more and add even more thought to the mix. So it's just this undoing. We just begin to start to undo what looks true that isn't. It's anxiety can feel so potent. It can feel, it's like that red alert on the system. It's like life and death. It's like, oh my God, this feeling, and I need to get rid of it, and I need to avoid it. And what if we could just see that it was just a feeling and it couldn't hurt us? And what would that look like? What would that be like? And I'm not discounting it, because I've been there, so I know how uncomfortable it can feel. But what if we were just allowed to feel it? What would happen then? What if there was no resistance? What if there was no labeling? What if we just saw, we feel? Sometimes we feel good. Sometimes we feel bad. What if we didn't attach anything to it? And I think this is something that we get to see through this understanding, through starting to see that, back to this one simple truth, that thought is always at play. And the more thought we add, the worse we're going to feel. And I heard this recently and I really loved it. It's like you're driving around in your car and you're on the motorway, and suddenly, like, you see in front of you, there's lots of cars, there's a pile up. There's all these cars that have like bumped into each other. And that's like our thinking, you know, when we overthink, all those cars, all those thoughts bump up into each other, and this creates this anxiety and this feeling. And it's like, what do we do in a pile up? It has to be cleared. We don't add more cars, so we don't add more thought. You know, we're so used to adding more thought when actually leaving it alone is the best thing that we can do. The mind is actually a self-healing, but we've forgotten it. We've become into a world where we're always interfering when we don't actually need to. So it's so interesting. It's the opposite of what we know to do. It's like if we leave it alone, it's like it starts to calm. We fall out of the mind. We fall into a deeper space, and we have much more peace. The opposite is like the pile up. We add more and more and more, and we become more and more uncomfortable. You know, we have more and more anxiety. That leads into a panic attack.
One of the things the great things that I've learned is that pretty much all of my fear, all of it, is imagined. Because how can something that doesn't exist hurt me? And I don't mean to laugh when I say that, but when I say it out loud, it was quite funny, the amount of times I was worrying about events that could probably never happen, or, you know, just that imagined fear, whether it's the next day, the next week, the next year. You know, if I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children. Like, this is a lot to think about. You know, it's just being in the moment and just being here right now. It's like if I was worried about something in particular, it's like if it's really hot and it's a candle and if you've got your hand over it, it's going to hurt. So, you know, you can just take your hand off the candle, stop putting your hand on the candle, you know. But that was just really very relieving to know that pretty much, everything is imagined. It's all in my mind. The fear doesn't exist unless I allow it or add things to it. It's not real. It's all imagined.
Yeah, thank you. The mind is like the best special effects department in the world. It really will make what you're scared of look real. But I love what you said there about the presence, and it's so true. It's like when you're truly in the moment, that fear cannot get hold of you. You know, when you're truly present, that anxiety doesn't exist. The mind has to be doing something for that anxiety to exist. So it's that coming back into the moment. And I say to clients that if you start to get caught up, be where your body is, be in that moment. You know, that's where you're going to begin to see this. Stop trying to fix the mind with the mind. Come back. You know, knowing that it's not the world causing it. Know that this power of thought, it's so amazing. It can make you feel that bad. You know, we should really be in awe of thought. It's so incredibly powerful. And actually what your body is doing with those feelings is like a red light. It's like overthinking, you know, pile up. But we've got it wrong. We haven't seen it like that. So it's just coming back to that. It's like when you are anxious, you are in a mental creation and you are not in the moment. Okay. And it's just that the mind can get carried away. So for me, say I did get anxiety. Yeah, of course my mind could grab it for a moment and start to make a creation. But the moment I'm onto it, the moment I go, I know what this is thought. The moment I'm present. That's what's so interesting. It's like, as soon as I challenge it, as soon as I'm like, you're not real. This isn't truth. Then I'm back. Then I'm starting to unwind it. Yeah, then I'm starting to take away its power. Because thought in the present moment is the only true reality. You know, I have my thoughts and I have my feelings, and they're coming from the moment. And my mind will make that look like so many different things, as I've said. So I've been talking for half an hour. I'd like to see if anybody has any questions or has any reflections, or if Gem, if you'd like to say anything else.
I think, yeah, if anyone has any questions, that would be great. But one of the things that I wanted to share was that I think I definitely used to beat myself up a lot, and this is one of the things that we spoke about, Molls, whether it was, you know, having a couple of glasses of wine every night, or just doing things to try and make myself feel better that aren't particularly healthy. But you reminded me that actually anything that anyone does to make themselves feel better, whether it's meditation, reading a book, going for a run, getting really fucked up, whatever it is, they're doing what they think is the best thing at the time to make themselves feel better. But again, it just adds more and more to, okay, I need to do something to make myself feel better because of this feeling. So it makes complete rational sense to take everything away, like exactly what you teach. But every other teaching, traditional, it seems to be, okay, confirm the problem, then try and fix it. So this is so different from anything that I've ever learned. And I think anything that I've ever seen that's out there. So it's pretty, I can't think of the word for it, but it's just so different. Tyson, you just requested as well, so we'll bring you up. But
Yeah, it's that when we know better, we do better. And the only thing we might know to do is to drink to relieve the feeling. It's like the feeling looks so true and so real that we want to do something in the world to take it away. So yeah, anxiety doesn't only lead to a bad feeling, but also leads to behaviours that can be unhelpful. And I would love to talk about that. I'm not sure we'll have time tonight, but that's a really great thing to talk about. But Tyson, hello.
Hello, ladies.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good, thank you.
I joined this, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I've been going through anxiety before. I'll give you a bit of my background. I have been an Ibiza boy. I have been a monk. I have been a nerd. I have been a street fighter. I have been a boxer. I try to experience things as much as possible, and my latest journey is the spiritual journey. What I came to understand from the mental health aspect is everything is subjective from one person to the other. So one approach to one person, in my opinion, might not work for the other. So to hear you talking about it this way, I think the way you talk about it, Molls, is you gathered all of the common things and you aligned them so well that I was actually impressed. You dropped my jaw. That you put all of the things that's supposed to be subjective, but you align them in common, and you made it as a topic that everyone can relate to. So my question to you is, is anxiety, so when I'm anxious, the first thing I notice is that my jaw is clenched, my shoulders are tight, my hands are I forget the name in it. But
sweaty.
yeah, no, that's always all the time. No, but yeah, you get the point. So, is the body reflecting to the mind, or is the mind reflecting to the body?
Great question, and thank you for speaking. For me now, how much are we really going to be 100% sure that anybody knows the answers to that question? But the truest that I can see it is that it's one. Now, the mind loves separation. The mind loves, good and bad, black and white, loves duality. Now, so we want a body and a mind. Like, what is doing what? And I would say it's almost like It's one thing. It's the orchestra playing, and it's playing the tune of anxiety, and that anxiety is coming from thought. But obviously, that feeling is reflected in our body. But is it a separate thing? Is it not to me? This is, as I said, the two sides of the coin. There is one coin. There is one thing at play. And to me, that's the energy behind life. That is so you said you're on a spiritual journey. So for me, very much, we are a creation. We are energy. That energy is also creating our experience in the moment. And that will look like many, many different things. So as you said, it's all subjective. We're all going to have different experiences. So when I'm happy, that Molls is happy in the moment. Well, that's one experience. That happiness is who I am in that moment. That's that creation of that moment. So when I'm sad, that's that creation in the moment. There isn't a separate thought feeling. There's one thing. There isn't a separate me. There's a me that's coming through this energy, which is one. So from the spiritual perspective, I'm very much a lover of the non-dual teachings. So it would take away any separation. It would take away any opposites. It would take away any duality. And it starts to teach us that everything has the appearance of separation, but in truth, there is only one. There is one energy that creates everything. So I don't know if that's a little bit deep for the answer for a question about of what you're saying about the body and mind, but to me, it reflects that perfectly. You know, we have to remember that the mind wants to overcomplicate everything. You know, there is such a complexity to the mind. So again, when I'm teaching and when I'm working with someone, I say, like, a really good idea is when you're in complexity, that you're probably away from truth. When you're in simplicity, you're coming home to who you really are. So again, we've got all these signposts that we've ignored. And I think it's to our detriment because those signposts are generally telling us the truth. So complexity, an overwhelm of feeling in the body, all these things are actually pointing to us that we're going in the wrong direction. So if we come back to simplicity, if we come back to a good feeling, we're like, okay, we're sitting more in the truth of who we are. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, but that opens the room for a different question, which is, who are you?
Okay. Yeah, who am I? Well, I'm not who I think I am. Yeah, it's, that's such a deep exploration, and I've spent a lot of my life asking that question. For those that don't know me, I lived in, when I was younger, I lived in a commune in India. My quest was for enlightenment, so I've always had that kind of seeking nature. And I do believe that this understanding actually gave me the answers that I was looking for, but it was much simpler than I ever could imagine. So it wasn't a case of enlightenment being a detachment from my humanity. It was a case of, actually, I'm here to have the human experience. So who am I? Is I'm an illusion in time that's called Molls, and I'm having this, and I play this character, and I have this character, but the truth of who I am is actually eternal and never changes. So for me, it's that again, if we go into the non-dual teaching and we go back to the oneness is the truth, the eternal, the never changing, and the duality is the humanness, the experience. The fact that it does change. Anything that changes isn't truth. It's a transient experience. It's impermanent. We know life is impermanent. We know our experience is impermanent. We know the nature of the human experience is change. And again, that's really actually an interesting point, because we're talking about anxiety. A lot of anxiety is caused because we as a human, we don't always like change, and we resist change. And change is the very nature of being human. It's impermanent, it's destructive, it's creation, it's destruction, that duality. The truth is one, is eternal, is infinite. And we get glimpses of that, And in those glimpses is where that peace of mind comes in, where that trust in life, where the anxiety dissolves. You know, for me, it was this looking towards. It's really interesting again because it's a paradox. I think my journey of seeking my whole life led me to my mental illness when I got it, and my anxiety and my depression. It was almost like I broke, or it felt like I broke, and I had that experience, and then. But that seeking also led me to come out of that and see something so deeply that I'm now able to teach it and help others. So there was when I came across this understanding, I do believe I had an awakening. But again, that doesn't elevate you or make you different to anyone else, because we're all one and we're all the same. But what it does, it gives you an understanding of who you are, and an understanding that you're not here to escape being human. You're here to actually fully embrace it. And in that embracing does come sadness, happiness, anxiety, joy, all the things that we get to experience as a human. So what I teach doesn't make you immune from feeling, doesn't make you immune from feeling bad. You're always going to get all the feelings, but you get much more comfortable with having them because you know you're here to have that experience. And the impermanence is also the impermanence of any feeling. It will come and it will go. Unfortunately, we've become so lost and we don't know who we are that we get those feelings and we try to fix them. And by trying to fix them and try to make them about the world, we hold them in place. And again, this is that epidemic that we were talking about of mental illness, because everybody's looking in the wrong direction. We're looking out to be fixed. We're looking out saying we're a victim of the world. We're looking out for someone to save us. And it's all in you. It all comes from you. It's all in you. You have the absolute power to see this and be okay, and to live a happy life and to live a joyous life. Again, not all the time. Feelings will come and go, but there's something in us that is this creative force. It is so powerful. And when we see that, and when we turn inwards and we start to understand who we are, it really does change everything.
I love that. And that actually reminds me of a quote that says, those who look outside are lost, and those who looks inside are awakened. Something like this.
Yeah.
But there is something, when you were mentioning it, when you were explaining anxiety with different approaches, you tackled anxiety as if it's resistance. It's the friction that comes from resistance against things. You mentioned, for instance, the attachment, and when you mentioned the attachment, I'd like to highlight on this, because people usually misunderstand the meaning of the attachment. It's not being away from everything, it's actually being involved in it, but without letting it to consume and own you, right? And the way you're speaking about all of this in a Buddhism teaching is feelings come and go, nothing lasts forever. And that's true. You're happy in the moment, but how can you put someone anxious in the moment? How can you teach them to be in the moment, not on the surface level, but on a deeper level, on being able to do them by themselves at their houses?
Okay.
Well, I can quickly answer and say, well, she taught me. So, but you give the long answer, Molls, because I was a wreck for a while.
And I was taught by somebody. And what's really interesting, it really looks like we were taught, but there was just something in us that was ready to hear. So I have complete trust and faith that when somebody comes to me with work with me, or does one of my courses, or is on a spaces, that They have that within them, that readiness to hear something. So you can never, ever make anyone hear anything. That's something I know is absolutely true. I could get somebody that wasn't ready to hear and speak to them all day, every day, and they wouldn't hear a word I was saying. But someone that was ready to hear, I could say one sentence and they could have an insight, and they could completely hear it. So you cannot make someone hear. Now, what I would say, let me think. I think being in the conversation, I think having that grounding, being that openness and that willingness and being ready to hear is just the most important thing. How can you make somebody present that's anxious? I couldn't in a million years. Could I sit with them and hold their hand and listen to them and speak to them, and they have the potential, no matter how bad that anxiety is, to have some new thought and be present and in the moment? Absolutely, 100%. Is that on me? No. That is because it is coming from them. See, we have to understand that, as you said, it all comes from us. When we see it all comes from us, we always have the potential for new thought. When we're a victim, when we think it's coming from the world, we're stuck because it looks like the world has to change for us to be okay. So it's back to that really, really simple point of it's inside out, not outside in. It's coming from us, not coming to us. That person will hear in that exact moment they're ready to hear. Okay, so, but it is very much about being open and listening. So if someone is on the call or someone I'm working with, they have to have that openness. It's like, just forget what you know. Forget what therapies you've had. Forget about all the stories, all the things that you believe. Now we're going to strip that all away. We're going to take you back to what's really true. Yeah, we're going to take away all the bullshit. You know, it's and we've got all. I mean, I've still got loads of it, I'm sure, but the more we strip it away, the more we come back to the truth. That the healthier we are, the happier we are, the more in the moment we are. And I think that, for me, there is nobody that doesn't have that potential. I cannot sit with somebody and believe that they haven't got the potential to be okay. I have to see their well-being. And in fact, I do see their well-being. It's a really important point. I never want to sit with anyone and point out they're unhealthy. I'm always going to point out how healthy they are. Again, it's different to other things. You know, I'm not looking at a broken person. I'm looking at a healthy, whole person that is just believing a lot of thinking that isn't true. Again, thought is really is the key in this. It's really the only true reality is that we are experiencing thought. And I will go on and on about it on these spaces, but it is because it is true, and it is because it sets us free.
So I like that. One way when I'm anxious or stressed, I deal with it in two ways. Both of them include manipulating my thoughts. For instance, I'd go on, okay, I'm grateful for having a shelter, and I imagine the house I'm in. I'm grateful for having food, and I imagine the actual food that I had. I'm grateful for having my parents, and I visualize one time that I actually hugged them or saw them smiling, and I go on with that, and it actually takes the stress away. And the second way that I used to handle my stress is I'm grateful for my senses. I start using my senses. So I'm grateful for my eyes, and I start using my eyes to try to see the colors, the beauty in the colors. Then I'm grateful for my ears, and I start listening to all the voices are there. And that actually puts me in the moment. That takes away the anxiety that comes from the future. But in those ways, what, like, I'm not sure that works for everyone. Is there something that's more that you recommend other people to get out of anxiety? Because I'm sure most of the people in here, because they're interested about anxiety, means that they're dealing with it or they know someone who's dealing with it. what do you recommend them to do when they get those feelings, thoughts?
Okay. I love that you found that for yourself. And I think I've said this on the last spaces, is what I teach is something called the 3 principles, and it is a description, not a prescription. What you have found for yourself and works for you would not work for anyone, or would work for maybe a couple of other people. It's very much that we can have things come through us that we think, okay, I'm going to do that, and it may be helpful, but we have to understand that's what works for us. Now, even simpler than what you do, and I don't want to take away what you do because it works for you, even simpler than that is to see it as thought. Then you don't have to do any of that. Again, I don't want to take that away from you. If that works, carry on doing it. But even simpler, even more upstream, is to go, I feel anxious. I have anxious feelings. I have anxious thoughts. Full stop. Not, I have anxious feelings, it's because of this. Not, I have anxious feelings, I need to do that. Not, I have anxious feelings, I should be grateful. Literally, I have anxiety. That anxiety is coming from thought. I don't need to know any more than that. That's it. See, because the less attention I give it, the more it's going to dissolve. The more I'm taking away its power. If you look at when someone gets anxiety and they're trying to fix it and they're going through their minds and they're working out what they need to do and what it is, and it's like you're giving that anxiety so much attention, you're giving that anxiety so much power. So all of this is always about taking the power away. It's always about stripping it back. So again, great that you do that and that's worked for you and that's come through you, but I will never give anyone anything to do. Now, if a client comes back to me and says, actually, I got anxiety and I knew it was thought, but then I got the insight to do this and it really helped, I'd be like, great, do that. Because we're moving away from a wrong and a right way to do things. We're stripping it back to the fact that we feel because we think. Okay? And if we can see that simplicity, any feeling will pass by. Is that helpful?
That is actually very helpful. And when I was doing Vipassana meditation, it's a 10 days retreat where you don't speak to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to explain it to whoever is listening. It's 10 days you don't speak to anyone, no eye contact, no hand gestures, you cannot read, no phone. You wake up and meditate from 4 a.m. till 9 p.m. and you sleep for 10 days. And the whole experience, it's basically that Buddha himself, he says, I'm not a messenger, I'm not a god. I'm just here to teach you a way of peace. And it's to observe that everything is a thought. It's just a feeling. You need to observe that. And that's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly the same thing you're saying. If you have a thought, don't label it. It's not good. It's not bad. It's a thought. It passes through. And it's basically the exact same thing that you do. But when I did it and I came back to real life, it definitely helped. I still practice the meditation. But when you see, for instance, your loved one sick, it's in front of your eyes. So it needs a daily practice, in my opinion at least, to be able to detach yourself from that feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would disagree. I mean, I love what you say, but again, a daily practice is something that would be additive. See, what we have to remember is the mind hates doing nothing. The mind hates not being involved, and we really are detaching from the mind with what I'm teaching you. And so to add a practice, which I used to do myself years ago, but doesn't make sense to me now, would be something that would be a doing. So we really take it back into the nothingness.
Yeah, there are so many things, like so many retreats that I wanted to go on to, so many different things, and now I just realize there's really nothing that I could ever do because it's all just down to me. And adding on these extra things, it makes there be a problem, and that's what we don't have. We don't have a problem, and if we try and fix something that doesn't exist, we're adding to it.
Yeah.
I think Zoe is requested. Did you want to take any more questions, Molls?
Yeah, lovely. Yep, fine. I'll
Yeah.
speak to Zoe. Yeah, I've got a little bit of time left.
Yeah, and anyone else who wants to ask, safe space, but probably like maybe 15-ish minutes left.
Yeah,
So
just wait. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Hi,
Zoe
Zoe.
gone.
We'll get her back.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
Zoe's in the Telegram group as well. Molls and I have made a Telegram group, which is t.me/unminding. So anyone that wants to join, there's a chat where everyone can chat between themselves, ask questions, and we post different things in there. So you guys are all welcome.
Yeah. Zoe's back. Shall we see if she'll get on to speak?
I've just invited you, Zoe, if you wanted to come up. And yeah, anybody else?